Welcome back to Andersen Acres. We are in the kitchen, but we are not baking today. No, instead we are going to talk about incubating your own chicken eggs. Okay, chicken eggs are easy, probably the easiest of all eggs to incubate. So if you're looking to get into hatching your own babies of any type, you probably want to start with chickens. They're a real good way to get incubators dialed in. They tend to be less expensive than some other birds. So if you're going to get into hatching, you really should start with chickens. So let's talk about incubating. Incubating requires fertile eggs. You might have your own fertile eggs right there. Those are fertile eggs. Or you might have to purchase some. Buying eggs locally is always best, but you can have them shipped as well. These were purchased and they were shipped, okay? So these are my own, and these were shipped into me. Shipping eggs is infinitely easier than shipping chicks. So I know in the video previous to this one on this playlist, I talked about shipping chicks. It's easier to ship eggs. If I have to choose between getting live chicks and getting hatching eggs in the mail, I am going to choose hatching eggs every time. It's less difficult all around. As long as the eggs aren't completely shaken up by their journey and they're not broken, they're still okay. Hatching eggs that have been shipped will have a lower hatch rate than eggs that haven't gone through the post, but you should still get a few eggs, a few chicks should hatch out of here. So out of these 18 eggs, I would expect 9 or 10 chicks. This is good. More than that is excellent. So you should know that your hatch rate on shipped eggs will be significantly lower. These ones, I expect pretty much all of them to hatch. So I have, I think, 11 in here. Yes, I do. So I would expect 9, 10 chicks out of that too. And I would expect 9 or 10 chicks out of this. Because shipped eggs, your hatch rate will always go down. That's just the way it is. So if your eggs froze or got roasted in their journey, then they probably won't hatch at all. So for that reason, you should not order hatching eggs in the winter, and you shouldn't order it when the temperatures are above about 28 degrees Celsius. They'll get roasted. So just don't. Okay? Just don't. Do not ever wash your eggs before incubation. So these are all pretty clean. You can see there's a little muck on this one here. So they're pretty clean. I try to hatch the cleanest eggs I can, but you know, sometimes you just can't. So like there's a little muck on this one. It's you do the best you can. So they're pretty clean, but they're not completely clean. You do the best. So don't wash them, but you can pick off any poop or muck, but absolutely don't wash them. Eggs have a bloom on them. So these eggs will have a barrier when they were laid. Okay, that barrier protects the developing embryo from bacteria that might penetrate the shell. This bloom is important, so do not wash hatching eggs. You don't need to rinse them in anything. Some people will talk about putting them in Listerine or peroxide. Don't do that. Okay, there have been multiple studies that suggest no statistical difference in hatch rate. Okay, so some people do it just because they can, and it may not hurt their hatch rate, but it also actually doesn't improve it. Anecdotes aside, you're always going to have anecdotes that talk about, well, I did it and it worked for me. Yeah, maybe, right? Maybe it worked for you. It's the same with not turning eggs. You'll have people who swear by it, but those are just personal anecdotes. The science on hatching eggs is very clear. Don't wash them, don't rinse them, just get any like large specks. These are actually really clean. The lady I purchased them from did a very good job, but they're not washed. So pick off any big chunks that you might see, and maybe don't hatch eggs that are really full of muck, but don't wash them. So hatching your own eggs, like these guys, might sound like it's cheaper. Okay, so these are really nice eggs. I like them. I mean, I should like them. They're mine. But, I mean, it might sound like hatching your own eggs is the cheaper way to go. And sort of, okay? Sort of, except no. So you'll need an incubator. So that's an expense unless you're using a broody hen. Now I have silkies, so I always have a broody hen, but I still typically hatch in an incubator. Incubators require accessories. You'll need a thermometer, a hygrometer, a way to candle your eggs, so a candler. You might also need a water pan if the incubator that you purchase lacks a water reservoir, because I don't add water to my incubators because our humidity is fairly stable here. But if you live in an area that's really dry, you're going to need to add water. If your incubator didn't come with a water pan, you're going to have to get one. So there's things you need. Incubators aren't cheap. And the cheaper they are, the more work they are to maintain. If you add the cost of your time and effort, you can get a lot of chicks for the cost of an incubator. So I use Brinsea incubators. Even my cheapest one, the one I use as a hatcher, even that one was about $350. No, $250. Whatever. Something like that. Doesn't matter. But it was still expensive. I can get a lot of chicks for $200, $300. So it's expensive. But there's still reasons to invest in a really good incubator. Maybe you love hatching chicks. I really do. So even if I never sold a chick, never sold hatching eggs, I would still want at least one incubator just because I love hatching. Okay, if you love hatching, you might want to have an incubator, even if you're not looking to make any money hatching eggs. Maybe you want to breed your own birds, either to the standard of perfection or just because you like a certain color and look, and they're not always easy to find. Well, the easiest way to do that is to breed your own. You know, if you really love black silkies, and a good black silkie is hard to find, get yourself a starter pair, and then go from there. You can breed the two and hatch all their eggs, and before you know it, you got a whole flock of cute little black silkies. So maybe you want to do that. Maybe you just want to hatch and sell chicks. Maybe you just want to get yourself a couple of pretty barnyard mixed chickens and sell barnyard mixed chicks just because it's fun. Whatever your reason, if you're going to hatch your own, you'll need to know how to go about it. Now, a note on picking eggs to incubate. They should be relatively clean. So mine are a little dirtier than hers. Obviously, there's a couple specks. I still did pretty well getting them clean. She did better. Probably because she was selling and shipping them, and I was just picking them up to put them in the incubator. So she did a better job. She did better than I did. So they don't need to be totally clean, but an egg covered in poop can spread bacteria into the embryo as it develops and to the other eggs. So use the cleanest eggs you can, okay? They should be of average size. So you notice these are all pretty close to size. So they're all silky eggs, by the way. These are silky and those are silky. All silky eggs. So try to pick eggs that are all about average size. Don't hatch the really tiny eggs, and the really large ones tend to have trouble hatching anyway and often include a double yolk. So average size. You don't want something that's really big or really small. Average eggs only, and they need to be intact and look generally like an egg. So you want egg shapes, okay? That's what you want. Egg shape. Nice, eggy shapes. You do not want torpedoes. You do not want little round balls. You want normal egg shapes, okay? Really odd shapes should not be hatched. Store eggs that are sitting, waiting to be put into the incubator, pointy side down. So again, egg shape, fat side, pointy side. Store them pointy side down, okay? You want to leave them in a cool and slightly humid location because you don't want them to dry out. Conventional wisdom says not to refrigerate them, and you shouldn't. I will say that I have hatched refrigerated eggs and had some hatch. The hatch rate will be lower. So it's not ideal maybe, but it is possible to hatch refrigerated eggs, but I still recommend against it. Store them in a fairly cool, not cold, but fairly cool, room temperature or less, fairly cool, humid location. So often a mud room or a laundry room is perfect, depending on the temp. Other than that, and provided the eggs are fertilized by a rooster, you should be ready to go. Now, if you're going to have these eggs sitting around for more than 3 days before you put them in your incubator, you do want to turn them once a day. You can store them on turners. I tend not to have turners available for eggs because they're all in my incubators, but you can. If you have an extra turner, plug it in, put your eggs on it, and they'll slowly rock so that the yolk doesn't stick to the inside of the shell, because that will affect your hatch rate and it'll affect the health of the chicks. The other thing you can do is take your carton of eggs And you can get really anything that'll elevate your eggs. Okay, and you can just take something, tuck it under one side of the eggs, leave that 12 hours later, take that same thing, go to the other side, tuck it under the eggs, and just do that every 12 hours. It's not a big deal. If it's less than 3 days that they're going to be sitting, you probably don't need to do that. But if you're going to have them sitting for a week, you really should store them on turners. It will increase your hatch rate, and it will keep those eggs nice and fluid. You don't want those yolks sticking to the inside of the shell, okay? Okay, little terminology lesson, and sometimes even I use the wrong terms, so if you use the wrong terms, it's not a big deal. But a little terminology lesson. All eggs with a yolk are fertile, okay? A hen lays an egg, that egg is fertile provided there's a yolk in there. It's fertilized if a rooster has done his job and mated with the hen before the egg was laid. You don't need a rooster for your hens to lay fertile eggs. You do need a rooster if you want your hens to lay fertilized eggs. If you do not have a rooster, you can't hatch your eggs because they're not fertile. Okay? You must have a rooster for fertilized eggs. Hatching requires fertilized, not just fertile eggs. So if you don't have a rooster, these won't hatch. Now, I got plenty of roosters. I don't have that problem. And most of the people I know have roosters. It's not a big deal. But if you don't have a rooster, get yourself a rooster before you try to hatch your eggs. Okay? So that is about it for basically getting ready to incubate your eggs. You have stored them correctly. You have made sure they're not dirty. You have put them on turners if you need to. After that, all you have to do is get your incubator set up. So in the next video, we will talk about choosing an incubator. That's about it for us here today. We'll see you tomorrow.